He was the most feared man in the city, a mafia boss who ruled with power, pride, and fear. One call, one desperate, trembling call from the woman he once loved, he ignored it. And in that moment, he lost her forever. Her life, their child, everything. But what he didn't know, the real war was only just beginning. Welcome to Dark Love Stories, where love, loss, and secrets collide in the most unforgettable tales. If you love stories that grip your heart and keep you on the edge of your seat, you're in the right place. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story that will make you laugh, cry, and gasp in shock. Now, let's uncover a story of love, betrayal, and the fight for redemption. The city's skyline bled neon red and orange as Dominic drove through the night, the streets slick with rain and shadow. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel, but he barely noticed the cuts on his hands from the shattered penthouse glass. All that existed in the world at that moment was the fragile bundle cradled in his arms. His daughter, Aurelia's legacy, his last tether to a life that had already slipped through his fingers. He finally arrived at the safe house, a fortified apartment he had kept as a backup, a place meant for emergencies, but never for something like this. His body trembled as he unlocked the door. He had never felt so weak, so exposed. The strongest man in Novastrom's underworld, feared, untouchable, untamed, couldn't even hold his child without shaking. The infant squirmed, tiny fists brushing against his chest. Her cries pierced Dominic's heart like 1,000 knives, each one a reminder of what he had lost. Aurelia was gone. His daughter was alive, and someone would stop at nothing to take her from him. He laid her gently in the crib, wrapping her in a blanket, but his eyes never left her. He could barely breathe. Every instinct screamed that the world outside the walls was a storm, waiting to crash down. Then, slowly, Dominic opened the envelope he had carried in his coat pocket since leaving the hospital. Aurelia's letter. He had avoided reading it, afraid of the tidal wave of emotion he knew would follow. But now, with her gone and her daughter alive in his arms, he couldn't resist. He unfolded the paper, voice trembling as he read aloud. Words tasting like ash and fire. If you're reading this, Dominic, I didn't make it, but our daughter did. Protect her, love her. Be the man I always saw inside you, even when you didn't. Tears streamed down his face. He gripped the letter like it was a lifeline, rocking back and forth on the edge of the crib, his shoulders shaking violently. For the first time in years, the hardened, untouchable Dominic Vercelli wept openly, consumed by grief, fear, and overwhelming love. He whispered her name, Aurelia, into the silence. The room felt impossibly empty without her warmth, her presence, the sound of her voice. The silence was broken only by the baby's soft cries. Dominic clutched her, feeling her pulse against his chest, promising himself silently, I will not let you die. Not like this. Not ever. And then, it happened. The alarms tripped. A harsh, ear-piercing siren shattered the fragile calm. Red lights flashed across the walls. Dominic's stomach dropped, his blood turning to ice. The safe house, his sanctuary, had been breached. Gunshots ripped through the windows, shattering glass into glittering, dangerous shards. Bullets tore through walls, splintered furniture, and left scorch marks across the floor. Over my dead body, Dominic growled, his voice low, dangerous, vibrating with fury and desperation. He shielded the baby with his body, crouching low. Each shot that splintered nearby made his heart jump violently. His eyes scanned every corner, every shadow, every possible avenue of attack. The Valyrians had come, not for him, not for revenge, not for money. They had come for the baby. Dominic's mind raced. The baby was everything. Everything that mattered. Everything that Aurelia had fought for. Everything that was left of the life he had nearly destroyed by ignoring her calls. He pulled a pistol from his coat, loading it with trembling, precise motions. His eyes hardened, cold, unyielding. Every shot he fired would be the last line of defense. Every movement, every breath, every beat of his heart was dedicated to keeping her alive. The intruders pressed forward, masked, ruthless, silent. Shadows moved in perfect synchronization. Dominic fired blindly, bullets tearing through furniture and walls. Each round forced them to hesitate, but they did not stop. Glass shattered again. The baby cried louder, tiny wails piercing through the chaos. Dominic's hands shook as he fired, sweat running down his face, blood dripping from a cut above his eyebrow. One of the intruders threw a smoke grenade. The room filled with a choking haze, burning eyes and blinding Dominic temporarily. He coughed, choking on the smoke, but his grip on the bassinet never wavered. The baby's cries grew frantic. Another masked figure scaled the window. Dominic saw movement out of the corner of his eye. The intruder's hands were gloved, strong, determined. Dominic lunged forward, firing, trying to push the attacker back, but the figure was too fast. The world narrowed. Every sound became amplified. The scraping of boots, the metallic clatter of weapons, the rapid heartbeat in Dominic's ears, the tiny cries of his daughter. He struck, he dodged, he fired again. The room became a blur of bullets, smoke, and shattered glass. His body burned with adrenaline. Pain shot through his shoulder and ribs from the bullets that grazed him. He could not lose her. He would not. He could not let Aurelia's last wish slip from his hands. And then, in a heartbeat, in the chaos, in the deafening cacophony of gunfire and alarms, one of the assassins broke through Dominic's desperate defenses. A single, swift movement. A hand reached for the bassinet. Dominic lunged, but it was too late. The masked figure grabbed the baby. Her tiny body disappeared into the shadows. Dominic's roar of rage and despair split the night. Everything, the life he had sworn to protect, the last fragment of Aurelia's love, the future he had clung to, was now in the hands of someone who intended to destroy it. Time slowed. Every second stretched into an eternity. Every breath became a knife in his chest. Dominic's eyes burned. His body shook. Blood, sweat, and tears streaked his face as he made a silent vow. If they want her, they will have to kill me first. The room was silent for a heartbeat, too short, too terrifyingly short. Then the intruders vanished into the shadows, taking the baby with them. Dominic dropped to his knees, chest heaving, gun still in hand, mind racing, heart breaking. The echo of Aurelia's words reverberated in his head. Protect her. Love her. The weight of responsibility crashed down like a tidal wave, and Dominic realized the war had only just begun. Dominic whispers through clenched teeth, eyes blazing, "I will find you, and when I do, you'll regret ever touching her." But in the shadows, a second unseen figure smiles and whispers back, "Good luck, Dominic, because she's already gone further than you'll ever reach." The hunt has begun. The baby's life and Dominic's soul hang in the balance. The sirens of Porto Sereno howl somewhere far below, but inside the cramped apartment where Aurelia lies half-conscious, the world has been reduced to a single, suffocating battle between breath and pain. The floor is cold beneath her cheek. Her fingers twitch, searching for the phone she dropped. Her vision ripples like heat waves over asphalt. The ceiling blurs, shapes melt. Darkness creeps in and out like a slow tide. Aurelia forces her trembling hand forward, dragging her body inch by inch. Her legs feel non-existent, her stomach an exploding sphere of agony. Every contraction shreds through her like barbed wire. And yet, she pushes herself toward the faint glow of her phone screen. She tries to speak, but her throat is raw. A whisper escapes. "Please, not now. Not like this." Her palm lands on the phone. She presses the emergency call button with what little strength she has left. The ringtone barely registers in her ears. She hears only static, her own ragged breathing, and the pounding of her terrified heart. The operator picks up. Aurelia tries to respond, tries to form a single coherent sentence, but the contraction slams into her abdomen, ripping a scream from deep inside. The phone shifts. The operator hears chaos, a thud, then nothing. Aurelia's scream fades into a hoarse whimper. The world around her narrows to the sound of her heartbeat and the quiet, desperate thuds of the life inside her. "Stay with me on baby. Stay!" She gasps. Tears streak sideways down her face as she lies on the ground, curled in pain. Her body isn't listening to her. Her vision keeps fading. She tries to push herself up, but her arms collapse under her. A cold sweat coats her forehead. She blinks hard, trying to stay conscious, but each breath feels like she's inhaling fire. Another contraction slams through her. Aurelia bites down on her lip, tasting blood. She tries to focus on anything, her favorite lamp, the bookshelf Dominic once assembled for her, the small knit blanket she'd bought for the baby. But even memories blur. Her body convulses. Her back arches. The pain spikes so brutally she almost forgets her own name. She whispers Dominic's name, not as a plea, this time as a memory, a fragment, a fading heartbeat from a life that already feels lost. "Dominic, why aren't you here?" She doesn't know that miles away. He stands in a penthouse surrounded by glass and shadows, completely unaware that the strongest woman he ever loved is dying alone. A sharp, metallic banging shakes Aurelia back into a thin thread of consciousness. The apartment door bursts open. 2 paramedics rush inside, their boots pounding the floor. Their voices cut through the silence sharply. "Found her!" Her pulse is weak, oxygen dropping fast. "We need to move!" Their flashlights sweep across her trembling body. One paramedic kneels beside her. "Aurelia, can you hear me? Stay with us, we've got you." She tries to nod, but her head barely lifts. They check her vitals. Their expressions change. Fear, urgency. She's losing too much fluid. Her contractions are too close together. "We need her on the stretcher now." Aurelia is lifted gently but quickly. Her body feels weightless and heavy at the same time. Every movement sends a new stab of agony through her. Her breath shakes. Her fingers curl around nothing. She tries to speak, but only a faint rasp escapes her lips. A mask is placed over her mouth. "Just breathe. Stay with us." Her eyes flutter open long enough to see the dim hallway as they carry her out. Her hands cling weakly to the edge of the stretcher. As they wheel her toward the ambulance, Aurelia's heartbeat spikes, then slows, erratic and terrifying. She feels the cold night air brush her cheeks. Rain drizzles onto her skin, shocking and sharp. The city lights blur into streaks. Voices become echoes. The sirens begin their hunt through the night. Inside the ambulance, a paramedic grips Aurelia's hand. "You're strong. Your baby is strong. Hold on." But Aurelia's eyes drift downward, unable to stay open. She whispers a single word through the oxygen mask. The paramedic leans closer. "Dominic." Her voice is barely there, like a ghost of breath. The ambulance races through traffic, weaving, speeding, fighting for seconds they don't have. Her heartbeat monitor beeps wildly, then slows, then spikes again. "Stay with me," the paramedic yells. "She's slipping. Push more oxygen." Everything inside the ambulance becomes frantic movement and rising panic. Aurelia's body jolts. Her fingers curl, then loosen. Her head turns sideways, eyes half open but unseeing. Her child kicks weakly inside her, one small plea for survival. The paramedic radios ahead. "She's crashing. Prepare an emergency team now." Aurelia's breaths grow shallow. Her eyelids close. She falls into darkness again. Meanwhile, in the penthouse, Dominic stands alone in the silent living room. The city beneath him is a glittering playground of power and violence, but tonight it feels hollow. A glass of whiskey sweats on the counter beside him, untouched now, forgotten. He rubs the back of his neck, trying to steady the unease crawling under his skin. Something is wrong. He can't explain it. He feels it in the way the air sits heavy, in the strange tightness in his chest, in the echoing stillness pressing on his bones. But he refuses to name it. He refuses to even consider that the woman he pushed away might need him. Dominic straightens, shoulders stiff. He tells himself he's imagining things, tells himself it's just business stress, tells himself he's fine, but his hand keeps drifting toward the phone. He turned off. He stares at it. Silent, dark, dead. He turns away. But the feeling doesn't leave. It only grows stronger. He paces, every step harsher than the last. Somewhere, deep in his subconscious, a voice begins to whisper. Turn the phone on, something's wrong, answer her. But pride slams its gates shut. Dominic grabs a fresh drink, swallowing the burn in one gulp as if the alcohol can drown the dread tightening inside him. He has no idea the woman who once held his heart is fighting for her life at this very moment. No idea that her child, his child, is struggling inside her womb. No idea that an entire future is slipping away in the time it takes him to pour another drink. He walks to the window, staring out into the night, unaware of the universe tearing apart behind him. Inside the speeding ambulance, Aurelia's oxygen mask fogs with every weak breath she manages to take. Her vision swims. Her limbs feel distant. Her consciousness flickers like a dying flame. The paramedics work around her rapidly, switching IVs, checking vitals, monitoring the baby's heartbeat. Their movements blur into streaks of panic. She's dilated too fast. This isn't normal. Her pressure is dropping. Damn it! We need to get her into surgery the second we arrive. Call her emergency contact again. The paramedic pulls out her phone from her belongings. He dials the contact labeled Dominic Moretti, emergency contact. The call rings once, twice, 3 times, straight to voicemail. The paramedic curses under his breath. He tries again. Voicemail. He tries again. Voicemail. Is this guy serious? He mutters. The mother of his child is dying. He tries one last time, and the phone immediately rejects the call. Aurelia stirs faintly as if hearing the words through layers of fog and pain. Her lips quiver. A single tear escapes the corner of her eye. Dominic, she whispers again. And for a moment, just a brief moment, the baby inside her kicks with a tiny spark of life. Then everything goes quiet. The ambulance slams to a stop at the hospital entrance. Doctors rush in. Move, move, she's non-responsive. Fetal heart rate unstable. Prep her now. She's critical. Aurelia is wheeled out at full speed. The bright hospital lights blur above her, passing like falling stars. She tries to open her eyes again, but darkness pulls her down too fast this time. The door to the operating room swings open. She disappears inside, swallowed by steel and fluorescent light. The doors slam shut behind her. Back in the penthouse, Dominic finally sits down, rubbing his temples. The air around him feels heavier than ever. Without realizing it, he glances toward his phone again. A strange, unsettling urge twists inside him. Turn it on, check it, do it. But he doesn't. He stands, walks away, trying to escape a feeling he can't explain. The phone remains on the table, screen black, silent, cold. Everything he should have seen, everything he should have heard, everything he should have answered, lies trapped behind one simple choice. Turning it off. And now, a life-or-death emergency call is trying to push through the dead screen. Aurelia's fate hangs in the balance, and Dominic has no idea. As doctors rush Aurelia deeper into the operating room, her heartbeat monitor shrieks loudly, "Beep, beep, beep!" Then suddenly, flatline. At that exact moment, miles away, Dominic's phone, still switched off, lights up eerily for a split second with a final missed call attempt. St. Leora's Hospital. Urgent. But he doesn't see it. He turns his back. And the moment he does, Aurelia's body goes still. The city of Novastrum didn't sleep that night. It held its breath, as if it sensed two storms rising at opposite ends. One built from bloodshed and bullets, the other from pain and a woman's fading heartbeat. The world split cleanly in half, and destiny stood in the middle, watching which part would shatter first. Inside St. Leora's Hospital, the hallways pulsed with frantic footsteps. Nurses rushed, gurneys squeaked across polished floors, and monitors wailed a rhythm that made even seasoned doctors stiffen. Aurelia's stretcher burst through the double doors of the trauma unit. Her hair clung to her forehead, soaked with sweat. Her breaths came in short, broken gasps. Her hands trembled on instinct, reaching for something, someone who wasn't there. "BP is dropping again," a nurse shouted as they wheeled her under the harsh white surgical lights. Another voice snapped back, "Move! Get her on oxygen, now!" The room tightened with urgency. Aurelia's eyelashes fluttered, her gaze swimming between shadows and shapes. For a fleeting second she tried to sit up, to speak, to explain, but her body betrayed her. Pain ripped through her abdomen, sharp enough to steel her voice. She felt the cold metal of the table beneath her. She felt the heat of panic rising in her chest. But most of all, she felt alone. Not far away, but in a completely different universe. Dominic Vercelli stood in his underground war room, face lit by the red glow of surveillance screens. The tension in his jaw was carved deep, like he had swallowed a storm. His men stood before him, trembling slightly, because Dominic wasn't just angry, he was focused, and that was far more terrifying. "Repeat what you just said," Dominic growled. A soldier cleared his throat, voice cracking. The Valerians plan to strike at dawn, sir. Full force. Their new shipment arrives tonight." Dominic's fingers tapped slowly against the edge of the steel table. Tap, tap, tap. The rhythm echoed like a countdown. His eyes darkened with the promise of violence. "Then we hit them before sunrise," he said quietly. "No warnings, no survivors." The room went still. No one dared breathe. Dominic turned away, dismissing his men with a flick of his hand. His phone buzzed on the table. Once, twice, then went silent. He didn't even look, because in his mind there was only one war that mattered tonight. A war he believed would define his reign, but across the city, another war, one far more fragile, far more urgent, was devouring the last pieces of a woman he once swore he didn't need. Back at St. Leora's, the surgical team worked furiously. Monitors spiked, dipped, then flatlined for a terrifying second. The room froze. "Aurelia? Aurelia, stay with us!" Her lips parted slightly, shaping a word, a name. Dom, Innick, barely a whisper, barely alive. A doctor leaned in. "Her oxygen saturation is tanking. Get me the crash cart." A nurse grabbed the paddles, hands shaking. Another secured the IV lines. Someone else raised the dose of vasopressors, praying the drugs would force her body to keep fighting. But her body had limits. Aurelia's fingers twitched weakly, as if reaching out, as if searching for the man who should have been here. The man whose pride built a wall too high for her voice to climb. Suddenly, her heart monitor shrieked, a long, piercing flatline. "No pulse!" a nurse shouted. The world seemed to tilt. "Start compressions!" the doctor barked. Hands pressed into her chest. Once, twice, again. "Come on, Aurelia, come on." 5 seconds. 5 long, suffocating, merciless seconds. Then, a flicker. The faintest jump of a heartbeat appeared on the screen. "We've got a pulse. Weak, but present." The room exhaled in relief, but no one relaxed. Her blood pressure was still in freefall. Her oxygen levels hovered dangerously low. The baby's heart rate had begun to decelerate in response. They were losing both patients, fast. At the same time, across the city, Dominic stepped into the armory, selecting weapons like a man choosing tools for sculpting death. His rage had built a cage around his heart, blinding him to every possibility except retaliation. His phone buzzed again, longer this time, more urgent. He didn't glance at it. He didn't imagine for a moment that someone might be fighting for their life, whispering his name between collapsing breaths. Back in the hospital, chaos swelled. The lead surgeon wiped sweat from his brow. "She's too unstable," he muttered. "If we wait any longer, we lose them both." A nurse looked at the monitor of the fetus. "Doctor, the baby's heart rate is dropping rapidly, severe decelerations." The doctor's face hardened with the weight of an impossible decision. His voice sharpened like a blade. "We need to deliver now. Prep for emergency C-section." The team scrambled. Gloves snapped, instruments clattered, anesthesia was increased. The alarms around Aurelia blared violently, echoing like screams. The surgeon raised his voice to cut through the chaos. "Prepare for C-section, now!" And as the bright surgical lights beamed down on Aurelia's fading face, the screen cut to black. Would Aurelia and her unborn child survive the knife, or would Dominic's pride carve a loss too deep to ever repair? The operating room was a hurricane of motion. Fluorescent lights burned bright enough to blind, but no one noticed. Every second stretched into an eternity. Every heartbeat, every breath, every drop of sweat mattered. Aurelia lay on the cold surgical table, skin pale, drenched in sweat, the only warmth coming from her own feeble pulse. The team of doctors surrounded her like soldiers in a battle they could not afford to lose. Scalpels glinted under the harsh light. Suction devices hissed, and monitors screamed warnings in a cacophony that would have unnerved anyone else. But these professionals had no room for fear. Her chest rose and fell unevenly, shallow and desperate. Her oxygen saturation dipped dangerously low. Each contraction she had fought through earlier now felt like a cruel shadow, twisting her body and refusing to let go. The lead surgeon barked commands, his voice slicing through the chaos. "Anesthesia, check levels, she's crashing. Pediatric team, ready the incubator. Prepare suction, scalpel, clamps, now." Aurelia tried to speak, her lips parting, but no sound came out. Only the faintest rasping breath, each one a battle in itself. Her hand twitched involuntarily, as if reaching for something, someone. She could barely remember. Suddenly, her heart skipped a beat. No, it stopped entirely. The flat line on the monitor screamed into the room, a chilling sound that froze everyone for a heartbeat. Nurses froze mid-motion, eyes wide. Doctors looked at each other with grim determination. There was no time for hesitation. "Charge!" the lead surgeon shouted. "CPR now! Push! Push!" Hands slammed into her chest, pressing again and again, trying to kickstart the fragile rhythm of life. The baby inside her moved, a faint flutter, a defiant struggle against the odds. Her fingers twitched. Her lips curved slightly. "Dominic," she whispered, a single breath that held her love, her fear, and the hope she had clung to for 9 months. No one heard it but the room, and the room held its collective breath in reverence. The monitor beeped erratically. Flatline, spike, flatline, spike. The surgical team's movements accelerated, sharp, precise, and desperate. Every second was a battle, a race against the cruel inevitability of mortality. Suddenly, the incision began. The scalpel cut through layers, tissue, and fragile life, the smell of antiseptic mingling with the copper scent of blood. The pediatric team readied a bassinet at the foot of the table, glowing under its small, sterile lamp. The baby's tiny body shifted inside, sensing the outside world without yet understanding it. Aurelia's chest faltered. Her pulse faded into near nothingness. Her eyes fluttered, half closed, half alive. Her hands curled weakly against the sheet. Every inch of her body screamed surrender, but the doctors refused to give in. They pressed on. And then, the cry came. A sound so small, so fragile, yet so explosive in its significance that it made the room pause for a fraction of a heartbeat. The baby screamed her first breath, tiny fists flailing, lungs expanding with life. Aurelia exhaled her last. The room fell into a strange, surreal silence. A victory and a loss existed simultaneously in the same space. A tiny human had entered the world, and the woman who carried her had left it forever. Tears formed on the faces of nurses who had seen too many losses to count. The surgeon stepped back, hands trembling despite years of experience. Even the steady, practiced pediatric team allowed themselves a single, solemn exhale. They wrapped the baby carefully, her cries steady but fragile, and handed her to a nurse. She was alive. She had survived against every impossible statistic, but the room still smelled of life cut short, of blood, and of sacrifice. Across the city, miles away, Dominic Vercelli finally picked up his phone. One hand hovered, hesitant, as if he could already sense the consequences of what awaited him. He pressed the power button. The phone exploded with notifications. 26 missed calls, all from St. Leora's hospital. The glow from the screen reflected in Dominic's eyes, wide, unfocused, terrified. His stomach dropped. A cold realization clawed up his spine and froze his muscles. Every instinct, every shred of pride and arrogance evaporated in that instant. He had ignored the calls. He had silenced the phone. And now, the world he had built on control was trembling. He snatched the keys from the counter, the metal biting into his palm. The city outside the glass walls glittered innocently, oblivious to the apocalypse about to hit one man's life. Dominic raced toward the garage doors, adrenaline coiling in his veins. He didn't see the reflection of the sniper's scope in the glass behind him. He didn't hear the faint whisper of the bullet's wind. A shot fired. A crack of sound so sharp it shattered the glass beside him. Shards flew like diamonds under neon light, bouncing off the walls and floor. He didn't flinch. He couldn't. He was already moving, already running, already consumed by the storm of guilt, fear, and unbridled rage that now defined him. The shattered glass cut across his hand, drawing blood that he didn't feel yet. His mind had no room for pain. Only one thought remained. Aurelia, the child. The mistake he couldn't undo. The city blurred past him as he drove, the streets merging into a streak of red and white lights. Every second brought him closer to what he feared and what he needed to see. Behind him, the shooter vanished into the shadows, already planning the next move. The game was no longer just about territory, power, or revenge. It was about life itself, about the consequences of pride and the cost of every decision he had ever made. In the operating room, the tiny cries of the newborn filled the sterile space. Nurses cradled her gently. Machines beeped rhythmically, a fragile but steady pulse. The battle had been won, for now. But the war for Dominic's soul, his redemption and the safety of the one remaining piece of Aurelia's legacy, was just beginning. The wind screamed outside as Dominic's car tore through the streets of Novastrum. He didn't speak. He didn't look back. He couldn't. All that existed was the knowledge that he had failed her, that he had almost lost everything, that he might still lose the one thing left that mattered. The hospital lights reflected in the night like distant stars, each one a silent witness to the collision of life and death that had just occurred. Dominic's phone buzzed again in his pocket. He ignored it. The bullet that shattered his window was only a warning, and the city seemed to whisper, "It's only begun." As Dominic rounds the final corner toward St. Leora's, a shadow detaches from the alleyway, weapon aimed. He senses it too late. Time freezes for a heartbeat. The figure steps forward, and a single gunshot echoes through the night. The next moment will decide not only his life, but the fragile life of the child Aurelia left behind. The streets of Novastrom blurred past Dominic's vision. Neon signs streaked red and white across his windshield like blood and light. His hands gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. Every fiber of his body screamed urgency, desperation, a primal fear that clawed through his chest and dug into his ribs. He could feel it. Something had broken tonight, something irreversible. At St. Leora's, the hospital doors swung open in a chaotic rhythm of gurneys, alarms, and rushing nurses. Dominic skidded into the valet lane, ignoring flashing lights, screeching brakes, and shouts from security. He vaulted from the car. Keys clutched tightly, his eyes scanning frantically for any sign, any glimpse of what awaited him inside. The corridors were a blur of white coats and rushing feet. Nurses and orderlies barely had time to register the man barreling past them, hair disheveled, eyes wild, one hand clutching the wound on his hand from the shattered penthouse glass. "Mr. Verselli," a nurse called. Voice shaky, voice breaking. "This way, quickly!" Dominic didn't respond. He followed instinct, following the beeping alarms, the smell of antiseptic and fear, the sound of life hanging by a thread. Then he saw it. The operating room doors swung open, and his eyes fell on a sight that froze him mid-step. The newborn lay in a bassinet, tiny fists curling and uncurling. Her face was red from the effort of her first cries, her lungs filled with the sweet, fragile gift of survival. But Aurelia was still on the table. Her chest had already stopped rising. Machines beeped in a rapid, chaotic rhythm, the sound of life being forced to cling to the thinnest thread. Dominic froze. The world tilted. His heart pounded as if it were trying to escape his chest. A nurse stepped forward, cradling the baby. "She's alive," the nurse said, voice trembling. "But your wife—" Dominic's knees nearly buckled. The room spun around him. His blood ran ice cold. The nurse didn't have to finish. He already knew. Aurelia had left him, and yet he still had a piece of her. He stumbled forward, reaching for the baby. She kicked, small but fierce, alive despite everything. His hand hovered over her fragile body. The weight of responsibility struck him with the force of a hammer. This child was all that remained, all that he had left to hold on to. He pulled out Aurelia's belongings. A folded envelope sat inside, blood-stained at the corner. Trembling hands tore it open. Her handwriting danced across the paper with the softness and ferocity he had tried to forget. "If you're reading this, Dominic, I didn't make it. But our daughter did. Protect her, love her. Be the man I always believed you could be, even when you wouldn't be." Tears welled in his eyes. He read it again and again. A strange, hollow feeling filled him. Rage, grief, and regret crashed over him simultaneously. His mind screamed at him for ignoring her calls, for silencing her when she needed him most, for being too proud, too stubborn, too cold to save the one person who had ever truly loved him. And then, from the corner of his eye, movement. A shadow detached itself from the hallway, a figure dressed in black, carrying a weapon, advancing slowly, deliberately. Dominic's first instinct wasn't surprise, it was fury. Rage fueled by the knowledge that someone dared to threaten his child, his only link to Aurelia's love, his chance at redemption. He grabbed the nearest surgical tray, tossing instruments into the path of the intruder. Steel clattered across the floor. The figure didn't flinch, calm, methodical. Dominic's hands shook, not from fear, but from a cocktail of grief, adrenaline, and pure, blinding anger. "Stay away from her," he roared. The intruder paused, weapon raised. Dominic lunged, using everything he had, the training, the rage, the desperation, to protect what remained of his shattered life. The nurse clutched the bassinet, eyes wide. The baby's cries escalated, small but piercing, filling the room with a stark reminder of life continuing despite tragedy. Blows were exchanged, metal clashed. Dominic's fists met a wall of resistance he had underestimated. He could taste blood in his mouth, feel bruises forming, feel the sting of cuts on his hands and arms. Yet he pressed forward. Every second was a blur, every movement a life-or-death gamble. Finally, with one last surge of strength, Dominic tackled the intruder, knocking the weapon out of their hands. It skittered across the floor. But the intruder was relentless, and Dominic realized the horrifying truth. This wasn't just a random attack. This wasn't just about money, territory, or vengeance. Someone knew about the baby. Someone wanted her dead. Someone wanted to hurt him in the most devastating way possible. He pinned the intruder down, rage coursing through him like wildfire. "Who sent you?" he demanded, voice low, dangerous, every ounce of pain and loss channeled into a single moment. The figure's eyes gleamed with cold amusement. "You don't get it, Dominic. This is bigger than you. She's not the only one they're coming for." Dominic froze. Every instinct screamed to protect his daughter, but the words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. The intruder laughed softly, a cruel, chilling sound, and Dominic's world constricted into a single thought. Aurelia was gone. His daughter could be next, and he was alone. He tightened his grip, rage and fear merging into a singular focus. The baby wailed, the alarms blared, the hospital staff scrambled. But Dominic saw only one thing, the intruder, and the threat to the fragile life he had sworn to protect. Time slowed. Every heartbeat echoed. Every breath seemed stretched to infinity. And then he heard it, a whisper from the intruder. "You can't save her. Not all of them." Dominic's mind froze. Not all of them? The room's chaos became irrelevant. All that existed was the tiny, helpless life in front of him and the promise of more danger lurking just beyond reach. He clenched his fists, glaring at the intruder. "This ends tonight!" he hissed. A hand reached for the weapon. Dominic moved faster, and before he could react fully, the hospital alarms were joined by the sound of something far worse, a gunshot from somewhere in the hallway outside the operating room. The bullet ricocheted, glass shattered, metal clanged. The intruder's eyes widened. The baby screamed. Dominic's heart stopped, and he knew in that instant the war had only just begun. As Dominic shielded the bassinet with his body, the intruder pressed closer, whispering one last terrifying truth. "They've already sent someone else, and this time you won't see them coming." The tiny cries of his daughter filled the room. The echoes of Aurelia's last words haunted his mind, and in that moment, Dominic realized the fight for his daughter's life would demand everything he had, or he would lose her forever. The city's skyline bled neon red and orange as Dominic drove through the night, the streets slick with rain and shadow. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel, but he barely noticed the cuts on his hands from the shattered penthouse glass. All that existed in the world at that moment was the fragile bundle cradled in his arms, his daughter, Aurelia's legacy, his last tether to a life that had already slipped through his fingers. He finally arrived at the safe house, a fortified apartment he had kept as a backup, a place meant for emergencies, but never for something like this. His body trembled as he unlocked the door. He had never felt so weak, so exposed. The strongest man in Novastrom's underworld, feared, untouchable, untamed, couldn't even hold his child without shaking. The infant squirmed, tiny fists brushing against his chest. Her cries pierced Dominic's heart like 1,000 knives, each one a reminder of what he had lost. Aurelia was gone, his daughter was alive, and someone would stop at nothing to take her from him. He laid her gently in the crib, wrapping her in a blanket, but his eyes never left her. He could barely breathe. Every instinct screamed that the world outside the walls was a storm waiting to crash down. Then, slowly, Dominic opened the envelope he had carried in his coat pocket since leaving the hospital. Aurelia's letter. He had avoided reading it, afraid of the tidal wave of emotion he knew would follow. But now, with her gone and her daughter alive in his arms, he couldn't resist. He unfolded the paper, voice trembling as he read aloud, words tasting like ash and fire. "If you're reading this, Dominic, I didn't make it, but our daughter did. Protect her, love her, be the man I always saw inside you, even when you didn't." Tears streamed down his face. He gripped the letter like it was a lifeline, rocking back and forth on the edge of the crib, his shoulders shaking violently. For the first time in years, the hardened, untouchable Dominic Vercelli wept openly, consumed by grief, fear, and overwhelming love. He whispered her name, Aurelia, into the silence. The room felt impossibly empty without her warmth, her presence, the sound of her voice. The silence was broken only by the baby's soft cries. Dominic clutched her, feeling her pulse against his chest, promising himself silently, "I will not let you die. Not like this. Not ever." And then, it happened. The alarms tripped. A harsh, ear-piercing siren shattered the fragile calm. Red lights flashed across the walls. Dominic's stomach dropped, his blood turning to ice. The safe house, his sanctuary, had been breached. Gunshots ripped through the windows, shattering glass into glittering, dangerous shards. Bullets tore through walls, splintered furniture, and left scorch marks across the floor. "Over my dead body," Dominic growled, his voice low, dangerous, vibrating with fury and desperation. He shielded the baby with his body, crouching low. Each shot that splintered nearby made his heart jump violently. His eyes scanned every corner, every shadow, every possible avenue of attack. The Valerians had come, not for him, not for revenge, not for money. They had come for the baby. Dominic's mind raced. The baby was everything, everything that mattered, everything that Aurelia had fought for, everything that was left of the life he had nearly destroyed by ignoring her calls. He pulled a pistol from his coat, loading it with trembling, precise motions. His eyes hardened, cold, unyielding. Every shot he fired would be the last line of defense. Every movement, every breath, every beat of his heart was dedicated to keeping her alive. The intruders pressed forward, masked, ruthless, silent. Shadows moved in perfect synchronization. Dominic fired blindly, bullets tearing through furniture and walls. Each round forced them to hesitate, but they did not stop. Glass shattered again. The baby cried louder, tiny wails piercing through the chaos. Dominic's hands shook as he fired, sweat running down his face, blood dripping from a cut above his eyebrow. One of the intruders threw a smoke grenade. The room filled with a choking haze, burning eyes and blinding Dominic temporarily. He coughed, choking on the smoke, but his grip on the bassinet never wavered. The baby's cries grew frantic. Another masked figure scaled the window. Dominic saw movement out of the corner of his eye. The intruder's hands were gloved, strong, determined. Dominic lunged forward, firing, trying to push the attacker back, but the figure was too fast. The world narrowed. Every sound became amplified. The scraping of boots, the metallic clatter of weapons, the rapid heartbeat in Dominic's ears, the tiny cries of his daughter. He struck, he dodged, he fired again. The room became a blur of bullets, smoke, and shattered glass. His body burned with adrenaline. Pain shot through his shoulder and ribs from the bullets that grazed him. He could not lose her. He would not. He could not let Aurelia's last wish slip from his hands. And then, in a heartbeat, in the chaos, in the deafening cacophony of gunfire and alarms, one of the assassins broke through Dominic's desperate defenses. A single swift movement. A hand reached for the bassinet. Dominic lunged, but it was too late. The masked figure grabbed the baby. Her tiny body disappeared into the shadows. Dominic's roar of rage and despair split the night. Everything, the life he had sworn to protect, the last fragment of Aurelia's love, the future he had clung to, was now in the hands of someone who intended to destroy it. Time slowed. Every second stretched into an eternity. Every breath became a knife in his chest. Dominic's eyes burned. His body shook. Blood, sweat, and tears streaked his face as he made a silent vow. If they want her, they will have to kill me first. The room was silent for a heartbeat. Too short, too terrifyingly short. Then the intruders vanished into the shadows, taking the baby with them. Dominic dropped to his knees, chest heaving, gun still in hand, mind racing, heart breaking. The echo of Aurelia's words reverberated in his head. Protect her. Love her. The weight of responsibility crashed down like a tidal wave, and Dominic realized the war had only just begun. Dominic whispers through clenched teeth, eyes blazing, "I will find you, and when I do, you'll regret ever touching her." But in the shadows, a second unseen figure smiles and whispers back, "Good luck, Dominic, because she's already gone further than you'll ever reach." The hunt has begun. The baby's life and Dominic's soul hang in the balance. The night air of Novastrum was sharp, biting through Dominic's lungs as he raced through alleys, his daughter cradled tightly against his chest. The city was silent in comparison to the storm roaring inside him. Grief, fury, guilt, and an unyielding protective instinct that made his muscles ache, his heart pound, his mind sharpen to a blade. Every corner he turned, every shadow he passed seemed alive. He imagined 100 assassins waiting in ambush, each one ready to claim the child that was all he had left of Aurelia, the only tangible proof of the love he had once rejected. The safe house was no longer safe. The alarms, the shattered glass, the gunfire, it had all been a warning. And Dominic knew it. Whoever had sent the Valerians wasn't interested in money or territory. This was personal. He could hear her cries through the bassinet cover, soft but insistent, a fragile heartbeat of life that demanded his absolute attention. He tightened his grip, stepping into the shadows, listening. Every sound, the scrape of a boot, a faint rustle of clothing, the whisper of air was magnified, each one a potential death sentence for the girl he had sworn to protect. And then he saw him. A figure emerged from the darkness, silent, deliberate, and deadly, the assassin who had broken through earlier. The man's face was hidden beneath a mask, but Dominic knew the body language, the lethal precision. This was no ordinary soldier. This was trained, merciless, and determined. Without hesitation, Dominic launched himself forward, instincts honed by years of violence and survival. His hands wrapped around the assassin, crashing him against a brick wall. The impact reverberated through his bones, but he didn't release his grip. The struggle was brutal. Fists and boots collided with bone. Weapons were swung and deflected. Dominic fought with every ounce of his strength, fueled by rage, grief, and the screaming promise he had made to Aurelia. The assassin's knife flashed dangerously close to his arm, grazing his skin. Pain exploded in white-hot streaks, but Dominic ignored it. The baby cried, tiny fists flailing, and that was all the reminder he needed of what he was protecting. Finally, with a well-placed elbow and a surge of brute strength, Dominic knocked the man to the ground. The bassinet had been shoved to safety during the scuffle, and the baby's cries grew louder, almost triumphant, as if sensing the victory. Dominic kicked the knife away, straddling the soldier, chest heaving, eyes wild. The man was bleeding, gasping, and alive, barely. Dominic's fists hovered over him, but he needed answers more than vengeance in that moment. "Who sent you?" Dominic demanded, voice low, lethal. "You don't understand." The assassin rasped, blood trickling down his temple. It wasn't about money, it wasn't territory, it wasn't revenge. Dominic's pulse spiked. Then what? The soldier coughed, gagging on blood, eyes flickering between defiance and fear. It was her, Aurelia. Dominic froze. Every nerve in his body screamed. He hadn't yet considered that her death was orchestrated. He had blamed himself, his missed call, his absence. But now... She was targeted, the assassin whispered. "We found out that she was yours, the mother of your unborn child. Taking her out would break you, destabilize your empire, destroy your life." The world narrowed. The streets, the city, the rain, they all disappeared. All that remained was the truth, sharp as a dagger, cutting through every illusion Dominic had clung to. Aurelia hadn't just died. She had been murdered. The premature labor, the complications, her collapse. It wasn't nature. It was poison. Weeks of carefully administered toxins hidden in her prenatal vitamins. Dominic felt his stomach twist violently. His hand trembled as he gripped the bleeding soldier. Anger and horror consuming him. The call he had ignored hadn't caused her suffering, but it had made him powerless to save her. Aurelia didn't just die. She had been taken from him, executed. His eyes darted to the baby in the bassinet, eyes wide with life and innocence. The assassin's words became a hammer. They still want her dead. Dominic's knuckles whitened as he gripped the soldier's collar. "Tell me," he snarled, "tell me they haven't already sent someone else?" The assassin coughed violently, blood bubbling at his lips. A twisted grin formed, half defiant, half mocking. "She won't survive the night," he gasped. "We already sent someone else." Dominic's heart froze. Every instinct screamed, every ounce of training and brutality sharpened to a singular point. The war was far from over. This was no longer just about vengeance. It was about survival. The soldier's body went limp, weak from pain and blood loss. But Dominic's mind didn't stop. He held his daughter tighter, eyes scanning the shadows, the city streets beyond the walls, the windows where assassins could be waiting. Every thought was urgent, every breath a countdown. He couldn't rest. He couldn't wait. "They think they can take her from me," Dominic whispered through gritted teeth, voice cold, resolute. "And they'll learn. They're wrong." The gravity of the truth settled like iron in his chest. Aurelia's death had been orchestrated. The attack on his daughter was imminent. The Valyrians weren't playing games. They were executing a plan meticulously designed to destroy him completely. And Dominic realized something worse. He was already behind. Time was a luxury he did not have. Every second counted. Every shadow could conceal a threat. Every step he took could lead to another ambush. The baby's cries were urgent now, tiny but insistent, reminding him that her life depended entirely on him. Dominic rose to his feet, eyes blazing with fury and determination. Every muscle in his body screamed readiness, every heartbeat thundering with the resolve that no one would touch her without paying the ultimate price. The city outside seemed to close in around him, the streets empty, but alive with unseen threats. Dominic's mind raced through plans, possibilities, contingencies. He knew the Valyrians' reach. He knew their ruthlessness, but he also knew one thing they had underestimated, his love for this child and the man he could become because of it. He whispered into the night, voice low and lethal, "I will find them. and they will regret the day they ever thought they could take her from me." The assassin coughed one last time, blood bubbling at his lips, eyes glimmering with dark satisfaction. "They're closer than you think," he gasped, voice fading. "Closer, and this time, you won't save her." Dominic froze. Every instinct screamed danger. Every thought screamed urgency. He held the baby tighter, eyes scanning the darkened horizon, and he realized, with the weight of horror pressing down on him, the real hunt, the true war, had only just begun. Dominic's gaze hardened, voice barely a whisper. "Show yourself, whoever you are. I will not fail her." From the shadows, a figure steps forward, silent, deadly, a glint of steel catching the faint light. Dominic's heart pounds. He knows instantly, this is no random attack. This is the final move. And the fate of his daughter, Aurelia's legacy, and Dominic's own soul teeters on the edge of a knife. The first strike is about to fall. The night sky above Novastrum was heavy with smoke and neon. The streets reeked of rain, burning tires, and the remnants of fire. Dominic moved like a shadow through the chaos, bassinet cradled against his chest. Arya's soft cries punctuated the silence, fragile and insistent, her life a beacon that demanded protection. Inside the heart of the Valyrian syndicate, Dominic unleashed the fury that had been coiled inside him since the night Aurelia died. Every step, every movement, every strike was precise. This was not just revenge, it was justice, it was wrath, it was the final reckoning for everything the Valyrians had stolen from him. Bullets tore through walls, ricocheting off steel and concrete. Flames licked the edges of crates, smoke stinging his eyes. But Dominic didn't falter. Each enemy who moved to strike him was met with the full force of a man who had nothing left to lose except the life of the child in his arms. Blood mixed with rain. Screams echoed through the abandoned warehouses. Shadows moved in every direction, but Dominic was the storm they hadn't anticipated. Years of training, instinct, and raw grief converged in a single lethal force. By sunrise, the Valyrians lay defeated, their empire dismantled in a single night of chaos and carnage. Dominic stood amidst the ruin, chest heaving, heart heavy. He looked around at the bodies, the smoldering crates, the broken remnants of a world built on fear. Victory was his, but hollow. Nothing could return the woman he had loved, the child Aurelia had carried in her womb, the moments that had been stolen. He carried Arya from the battlefield to the quiet sanctuary of a small cemetery outside the city. The rain had stopped, leaving the air cool and clean, the clouds above heavy with the promise of grief and reflection. There, in the center of the cemetery, he knelt before Aurelia's grave. He gently laid Arya in the grass, whispering her name. "Arya Aurelia Moretti, named for you, Mother. So your legacy lives." Dominic's hands trembled as he traced the letters engraved on the tombstone. Memories of her smile, her laughter, her courage and sacrifice flooded him. His tears fell freely, mingling with the dirt and rain, a baptism of sorrow and resolve. He stood slowly, cradling Arya against his chest once more, and made a vow that would define the rest of his life. The empire he had built with blood and fear was gone. He dismantled every illegal operation, dissolved every illicit business, severed ties with associates who had once feared him. The money, the power, the influence, it was meaningless now. Instead, Dominic poured everything he had into a new purpose. The Aurelia Foundation, named for the woman who had shown him love, even when he had been incapable of it, rose from the ashes. Its mission was simple, yet profound: to protect women and children in crisis, to give hope where fear and violence had prevailed. Each donation, each program, each life saved through the foundation became Dominic's redemption. The streets still whispered his name, but now, not with fear, they whispered with respect, awe, and curiosity. A mafia boss had become something different, something human. Selena's voice wrapped around the scene, haunting and reflective, as though the city itself was listening. He was the most feared man alive, until he ignored one call. The moment he declined was the moment he lost the woman he loved, the life they could have had, and the future she carried. But in the ashes of that loss, he found the one thing worth changing for. Dominic bent down, kissing Aria's soft forehead. Her tiny hand reached up, gripping his finger. The connection was electric, fragile, yet infinite. In that small, living piece of Aurelia, he found his purpose, his redemption, his reason to survive. For the first time in years, Dominic felt peace. Not the peace of power, not the peace of fear, but the quiet, enduring peace of love and responsibility. A father, a protector, a man capable of change. And yet, shadows lingered. As Dominic rose, holding Aria close, the camera of fate shifted to a distant mausoleum at the edge of the cemetery. A figure emerged slowly from behind the stones. A woman, elegant, cold, familiar, the kind of presence that carried secrets, whispers, and threats all at once. Dominic did not see her at first. He was consumed by the warmth of his daughter, the memory of Aurelia, the vow that had reshaped his existence. The woman stepped forward, her gaze locked onto him. Her presence was deliberate, commanding. She knew things he had never been told, things that could shatter the fragile world he was trying to build. "It's time," she whispered, soft yet terrifying, carrying authority and menace in equal measure. He must learn the rest. Dominic froze, every muscle tense, instinct screaming danger. The baby in his arms shifted, sensing the tension, gripping him tightly. Aria's cries softened, almost imperceptibly, as though the universe itself was holding its breath. The woman's eyes glimmered with knowledge Dominic could not yet grasp, secrets that Aurelia had feared, truths buried beneath the blood and pain of the past were waiting to be revealed. Dominic's jaw tightened. His grip on Aria became absolute, protective, unbreakable. He knew instinctively that whatever came next would challenge everything he had fought for, everything he had lost, and everything he had become. And in that moment, standing between the grave of his lost love and the fragile life of his daughter, Dominic realized the story was far from over. The wind whispered through the cemetery, carrying with it a promise of trials, revelations, and battles that would test him as never before. He took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving the mysterious figure. "Who are you?" he demanded, voice steady, lethal. The woman smiled faintly, shadows dancing across her face. "It's time you knew the truth," she said, voice low, cold, and mesmerizing. The camera of fate lingered on Dominic's face, hardened by grief, softened by love, sharpened by purpose. He was ready. But was he ready for this? The night seemed to hold its breath, and the baby in his arms stirred slightly, tiny eyes opening as if sensing the storm ahead. The future. Once fragile, now hung by a thread of secrets, shadows, and revelations. And in the darkness, the whisper echoed, he must learn the rest. The war was not over. The story was not finished. And Dominic, the man who had lost everything, only to find what truly mattered, stood on the edge of the unknown. Dominic tightens his grip on Aria as the mysterious woman steps closer. "You think you've seen it all," she whispers, "but what I'm about to show you will change everything you know about her, about us, and about yourself." Dominic's heart pounds. Aria stirs in his arms, innocent, unaware, and the night holds its breath. The next revelation will either destroy him or give him the power to protect what remains of his world.